Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sadhajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Rita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sadevi Pranamami Hari Kare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunivani Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome to our continued journey of self-discovery. So we have been covering a couple topics. Our first topic was search for happiness. I'll ask again as I open up most of them. Anybody woke up today wanting to be unhappy? No? Oh, okay. So the streak continues. Yes, every day we are in this quest for peace and happiness. Everlasting, eternal peace and happiness. And that is the life mission of actually every living entity. It is the common thread that unites us all. So the only question is where we are going to find it. The goal for all is one. The theist, the atheist, in between, humans, animals, all living entities. All are looking for the same thing. Peace and happiness. The only question is where to find it. And we said we have this intelligence that we should use to inquire how to find this perfection of life. If we just use our intelligence to eat, sleep, mate, and defend, then are we any different than all of the other species of life who simply eat, sleep, mate, and defend? No, but in this human form of life, we have this ability to inquire. So this is the journey that we have been taking. This journey of inquiry to find out where are the better solutions for me. And I ended the first session with the stark, maybe, conclusion that our peace and happiness, it is achieved when we reconnect with our Supreme Father. Just as I was listening to a class this weekend, and one of the buddies was very sweetly explaining this. When a baby is crying, do we know what the issue that the baby is conflicted with? Why she is crying? I don't know. But as soon as mother comes to the baby, regardless of whatever the situation, whether the baby is hungry, whether it needs to sleep, whether it wants a bath, whatever it is, mother will fulfill all the baby's needs so that it will come to a peaceful situation. Is that right? Well, we also are like the child in the arms of the Supreme Lord. We may have these needs, these different opportunities. And when we reconnect with our Supreme Father, then all of the things that we need in our life become fully met and resolved. And that baby, does the baby have to ask mother, please give me this, please give me that? Actually, the baby cannot even speak. But still, mother knows. Similarly, it is us as living entities. We don't even have to ask the Lord. He simply knows that what we are searching for. And by coming under His shelter, then we'll find this peace and happiness. So that was the summation of session 1. But then it brought us to last week's discussion, which is, well, then how do we know God exists? You know, if God is the key to our happiness, to solving all our problems in life, of which there are many, then how do I know God exists? So we established a 4-part proof of the existence of God. We said every creation in this world, it has a creator behind it. Whether it's the light bulb, the telescope, the steam engine, every creation, we know who is the inventor, who is that creator. If Edison invented the light bulb, then who invented the sun, the source of all life? Who is that? Its creator. And we understand that all creation has its creator. That is the supreme Lord. We know that every law, it has a lawmaker, someone who put that law into place. A traffic light is seemingly without a person directing traffic. But we know that traffic light was programmed by some person. Somebody taught all the drivers what to do in the different circumstances of red, yellow, green. There's a person behind that law. Similarly, with nature, we see so many laws. The law of gravity, the laws of hereditary. We see optical physics laws, the laws of karma. Who is the creator behind all these laws? It is the Supreme Lord. And like this, we went through a very systematic proof. And what we were able to see is that whatever we are able to create, one light bulb versus the sun, 5 or 6 models of cars versus unlimited varieties of life, we get some comparison to our ability to that of the Supreme Lord. And then we went to then discuss, well then, who is it that we can call God? What are the criteria for which one can be called God? And we said, who is your father's father? Your father's father's father. Eventually it has to end. What came first, the chicken or the egg? We don't know, but we know the Creator brought one of those two first. So he who has no source, who is the original source of all, that person we can call God. Every other person after is dependent on God. And we said God is also the supreme controller. How much control God has? Not even a blade of grass can move in the wind without the will of the Lord. And how much control we have? We cannot even control the growth of the fingernail on our little finger. So that is the difference in control. And proprietorship. What do we really own in this world?
We believe everything
We believe everything is ours. But everything we know, 100 years from now, what will you own? Not even this body. So we are temporarily just leasing whatever it is. Even if I paid off my mortgage on my house, I said, no, it's mine. I have the deed to show it. Stop paying your taxes, and then we'll see who owns your home. Everything we have, we are just temporary borrowers of. But God is the owner of everything eternally. So whoever has full possession, they are God. And then, by definition, then, if one is the source, controller, and proprietor, they are by definition also the enjoyer. We gave the example of ours. So like this, we discussed the proof of the existence of God. So now today's session is about, well, how to find out about God. So I'm going to fast forward. You can enjoy some of the pictures from last week. And so now we're getting to the 4th point, which is how to acquire about God. If I have this intelligence to acquire, Srila Vyasadeva says, Atato Brahma Jignasa. One should inquire. Well, what can I inquire about? So I can find out, well, what is God like? What does He want from me? What can I expect from Him? What is our relationship? Why did He create this world? Is there a different realm as well? What is the spiritual world like? What are the different universes like? All these questions we may have to help us understand how to find this better outcome in life. And so this is what we can inquire from. Right? But the question is how to learn about something like the creation of this universe. How can we learn about it that occurred such a long time ago? Right? We're just in one of millions of universes, so how to understand it? We can barely understand what's happening on this planet alone, let alone the millions of planets that exist in the universe. So there are two dimensions that make it difficult for us to understand things. One, we're trying to understand something that happened long, long ago, far before our presence here. And we're also trying to understand things that are happening far, far away. Our ability to know what is happening upstairs in this house, relatively easy. Setting aside your cell phones, how difficult is it to understand what's happening on the other side of the world right now? Well, what about in the other planets, in the other universe? So we're trying to understand something that happened long ago, like the creation, and we're trying to understand what is my situation today in context of everything around me. And everything is so vast. So these two dimensions make it difficult for us to understand. Right? So how to find knowledge about something that happened so long ago and so far away? That is what we're going to answer today. And one tangible example. Suppose you want to know how the Statue of Liberty was built. You can go to the banks of the Hudson River and you can peer at the statue and guess. Maybe it was put this way, maybe it was put that way. But there's a more reliable way to know. You go to the Department of Archives and there's a book that is documented how the Statue of Liberty was built. How many vessels it came in, how many boxes were on each vessel, how many days it took to assemble, how many people, how many boats. All of this was documented. So that we can then understand how something that happened relatively long ago happened. Right? Because it has been documented. So similarly, if we want to know about this creation, we have to go to the person who was there at the time of creation. How somebody wrote that book in the Department of Archives, because they were there when it was happening and documented it. If nobody documented at that time, then that information would not be valid. But because somebody was there at the time, they can authoritatively describe its creation. Similarly, then who can describe the creation of this universe? God, who is its creator. They can speak definitively and authoritatively about it. So we must ultimately go to him about it. And there's one phenomenon we see. You go to a social function, and somebody brings up the topic of biophysics. Nobody comes. Another person brings up the topic of nuclear science. Nobody comes. But then somebody brings up the topic about God. Everybody comes. But what is our actual qualification? What have we understood to then be able to speak authoritatively? So that is what we'll uncover today. How to acquire real, tangible information so that we can then speak very authoritatively. Okay? So question for you. How do we learn about anything? What are some different ways in which we acquire knowledge? We learn about something. What are some different ways in which we learn? Listening. Reading. Talking. Scriptures.
Brainstorming.
Huh? Brainstorming. So our own kind of analysis.
Yeah. Experience.
Seeing, experiencing. Yeah. I'm waiting for one more. We want some information. Where do we find it? TV. Internet. Where on the internet?
Google.
There we go. We Google it. Yeah. Google has become a verb, right? It actually is a website where we say, oh, let's Google it.
Now you can ask Alexa, Siri.
You can ask Alexa and say, I have to update my slides now. But these are different ways in which we acquire, right? So actually, there are three general categories of how we acquire information. So the thing that we're going to understand today is which of the three is the best way for us to acquire information about God. So let us explore each of these three in a little bit of detail. So the first way is pratyaksha praman. This means we use our senses, our sense perception, to collect information and to understand something. Right? Pratyaksha means eyes, aksha, in front of. So things that I can see. Seeing is believing. Right? Somebody brings me a piece of cake. I eat it. Pratyaksha praman. That is sweet. I understand it's sweet. Next time somebody brings me a piece of cake, I know this is sweet. I can touch it, taste it, understand it. I have acquired knowledge of this cake through sense perception. Right? So it is a very meaningful way to do it. But, as we know, as we'll come to see, there's a flaw in direct sense perception. Right? It fails us many times. Like this straw in the cup. Is it bent? No. But because of the law of optical physics, right, it appears bent. The refractory rays bend, but the image is actually there. So seeing is not always believing. Right? On a sunny day, we see water on the road. Is there water? No. So our Shastra explains that there are 4 defects in our senses that makes pratyaksha praman an imperfect source of knowledge. Right? So what are these 4 defects? First, we have imperfect senses. We tend to be illusioned. We thus make mistakes. And we have this cheating propensity. So this makes it impossible to acquire information about God through our senses. Yes, information about cake, okay. But about higher truths, it doesn't work so well. Right? Our imperfect senses, our eyes. Our eyes are amazing. Right? If something is too close, I can't see it. Something is too far, child is looking and watching the plane in the sky, and all of a sudden the plane disappears. Did the plane disappear? No. Our eyes cannot perceive it anymore. It has gotten too small for our eyes. But it didn't disappear. So our eyes are imperfect, right? Our ears, we can only hear a certain range. Some animals can hear, big, wider range, like dogs. You see that sometimes they get excited, and they're hearing something that we are not hearing because they have a wider range. So we have a limited range. Some animal species have wider range, but ultimately, we only hear so much of a range. Even the sense of taste, this pratyaksha praman taste, I think that's my reliable one. Really? Take an orange, cut it in half. Then bite into a lemon, and then taste that orange. How does that orange taste? Sweet. Very sweet. Now take that same orange and eat it after eating a sugar cube. Then how does that orange taste? Is the orange sweet or sour? It's the same orange. On one hand it's sweet, on the other hand, it's sour. Why? Because our senses, they're imperfect. They become adulterated. They become tainted. Right? So it's all relative. Similarly, your hand, you have a pot of water. You first put your hand, make it really warm, and then you put your hand in that water. How does that water feel? Cold. Then you put your hand in the freezer for a few minutes. And then you put your hand in the same bucket of water. How does that water feel? Enough? You get it? Our senses are imperfect. We tend to be illusioned. What do we see here? Triangle. 3 wheels. Pac-Man. Arrows. We see lots of things. Right? What do you see here? Musicians. 2 old people staring at each other. Some people see musicians, right? This is one. What's happening here? Is it moving? It's not moving. That is the way our eyes capture images. It's actually not moving. I promise you. That's a static image. Same thing here. If you go forward and back, it's moving, right? So the point is, our eyes tend to be illusion, right? Which one's bigger? They're all the same. They're all equal, right? So we have imperfect senses. So whatever we perceive, we have to recognize that it may be erroneous. It's subject to some error. Right? So we put so much faith in our senses acquiring knowledge, but we must understand which information is okay to acquire through our senses, like cake, which are not. Okay? And because the senses are imperfect, we know to err is human. Anybody's made a mistake in their life? It's human. It happens, right? And we see it. Yeah, daily. This Hubble constant. Science is refined this constant at least 3 times in life research. It's a constant, yet it keeps getting refined. It's used to measure long distances in space. Why? Because we make some mistakes. Previously, the brain was thought to be an organ to cool the blood. Anybody thinks that today? New information stuff. So we've made mistakes, right? There have been some epic mistakes in the history of mankind. In Europe, there was this bubonic plague. This plague was devastating everyone. We've just come out of a pandemic, so we now have some experience. When I used to speak about this previously, people could not even contemplate what a plague was, but now we have some understanding of it. Well, they were trying to find out, what is the source of this plague? What is the source of this plague? They could not figure it out. And then once one newspaper wrote an article that said it was the cats that were spreading this plague. So everybody went out and they killed all the cats. And there were no more cats. And then the plague multiplied exponentially. What happened? It was not the cats. It was the rats that were spreading the plague. But now who are going to get the rats? Because the cats are all gone. So like this, we have these knowledge, we draw conclusions, but sometimes it leads to disaster as well. Sometimes success, but sometimes also to disaster. So with so many mistakes, unfortunately, it also leads us then to cover it up. We have this cheating propensity. These scientists were so determined to try to prove that humans came from monkeys, and they couldn't find. So finally, in this place in England, one archaeologist, he connected the jaw of an orangutan to the skull of a human. He said, see? And for 40 years, this was believed that, yes, this is the proof. And finally, in the 50s, it was realized it was a complete hoax. That this scientist had connected two different pieces of the jaw. The point is, because our senses are imperfect, because we tend to be illusioned, that it often leads to a cheating propensity. Why is the IRS such a giant institution? To get us to pay our taxes honestly. That's it. That's the only reason it exists, if we really think about it. At least the vast majority of it. So this cheating propensity is there. It is natural. So Pratyaksha Praman is there, but we have to be careful what type of information we try to acquire from our senses. Yeah, acquiring knowledge about a bowl of ice cream, or what this painting is like. Okay, it's okay. But to try to acquire knowledge about some of these higher truths, we have to understand that our senses are not reliable sources for that type of information. So then what do? Well, we can go to Anuman Praman. So what we do is we take, whatever I can acquire through my senses, and then I extrapolate. Otherwise known as, I guess. That's the actual way, but we try to make it more fancy. I'm extrapolating. I'm theorizing. But at best, it is a guess. Based on what I see, I theorize, right? And we see this. Different people see the same phenomenon, and they come up with different conclusions. So many different philosophies, all observing the same thing, and they come up with their own ideas based on how they perceive things. Once there was a conference of top medical doctors. They'd all got together, neurologists and psychologists and orthopedists, and they all were getting together. And there was a break in the afternoon, and three doctors, a neurologist, a psychologist, and an orthopedist. They were sitting having some coffee and waiting outside. And they were watching this man cross the street. And he was walking with a pronounced limp. He was limping. And the neurologist said, I know this limp. I've seen this. There's a neuron that is misfiring in his brain. And with a quick treatment, we can cure his limp. And the orthopedist said, nonsense. This is not about a neuron. He has a hip issue. A simple alignment fix, and his limp will be gone. And the psychologist said, this has nothing to do with a hip or a neuron. It has to do with the trauma he experienced as a young child. With a little bit of therapy, we can fix his limp. And so by the time they had finished their analysis, this man had crossed the street. So the neurologist said, let's find out the answer. So he says, my dear sir, we're trying to find out the source of your limp. My friend here says it's because of trauma you experienced as a child. My other friend here says it's because of a hip issue. But I know it's because a neuron is misfiring. Can you tell us, why are you limping? He says, neither I have a hip problem, nor do I have a neuron in my brain problem, nor any trauma. I have a stone in my shoe, and that's not limping. And he took a stone out and started walking. The point is, we observe things, and based on our experience, based on our expertise, we try to draw conclusions. And sometimes we are right, and sometimes we are wrong. We don't want to deal with questions like, where am I going in this life? With sometimes right, sometimes wrong. So this Anuman Praman is very challenging because we guess based on whatever knowledge we have. Darwin, he was simply theorizing. A theory is a theory. It's not a fact. He's trying to observe. It's a plausible explanation. But many things he cannot explain. In his own book of origins, he says it is impossible that the retina, the eye, in its complexity can be explained by evolution through the amoeba. He says that is absurd. In his own book, he says, I cannot answer that. He cannot answer why some monkeys stayed under trees and some became humans. In this evolution, it is simply a theory. And the thing is, we have to understand that when we theorize, we are trying to understand things well beyond our realm of experience. Right? So let me give an example. Suppose that we step outside this house and we all go onto the porch. And from that perspective, can we understand what the whole of the United States is like? Can we understand what the climate is like in Florida? What the accents are like in the Pacific Northwest? What the buildings look like in the Southwest? Can we understand the topography up in the Northeast? By simply looking out on the front porch of this house? Can we understand? Why? Are we not smart? Do we not have the ability to analyze? Why can we not understand? I can't see. I'm taking a limited amount of information and trying to extrapolate it to something significant. So it doesn't work. So whatever I may see with the most giant of even telescopes, I may send a space shuttle way far into space, but how much am I seeing? Let me put it in perspective for you. In each universe, there are millions of planets organized into 14 planetary systems. And each universe is like a ball. And how many universes there are? It's compared that on a mile-long beach, how many grains of sand? Each grain of sand represents one universe. If you pick up just one handful of sand, I'll give you 10 days, you cannot count how many grains there are. You can't even count. Yet, each grain represents one universe. And within one universe, there are millions of planets. And within millions of planets, we are situated on one of those planets. And we are situated here trying to extrapolate what's happening in the entire creation. So my point is that our perspective is very limited. As foolish as it would be to speak with definitive authority about the whole of the United States by looking out the front porch of this house, similarly, anything that we try to extrapolate from what we see, we must recognize it's very, very limited. We are in the small aspect. Srila Prabhupada used to call this the Dr. Frog philosophy. Maybe at the end, if you remind me, I'll tell the Dr. Frog story. So this is Anuman Praman. Just like these 6 blind men, many of you have heard this story. 6 blind men go to the zoo. A new animal has come. And they all start to figure out, what is this animal? One is holding on to the trunks. And, it's like a giant hose. Somebody's holding on to the tusk. No, it's like a dagger. Somebody's touching the ears. It's like a sheep. No, it's a giant wall. It's like this, they're all trying to guess. And are they right or they're wrong? They're kind of right and kind of wrong. Nobody has come to any definitive conclusion. Nobody is absolutely right, and maybe nobody is absolutely wrong. Right? So by Pratyaksha Praman, they're not able to fully get what they understand. But then from there they speculate, they extrapolate. Right? So this is what scientists and philosophers are doing. They perceive the world through what they see, and then they try to speculate on things far beyond our scope of comprehension. So this is what happens. So then, what to do? If Pratyaksha Praman is limited, Anuman Praman is limited because we have limited perspective, then are we stuck? Well, thankfully, we have the third way of acquiring knowledge, and this is Shabda Praman. We actually have so much knowledge. Most of the knowledge we acquire through Shabda Praman. Right? How many of you know of Mount Everest? Heard of Mount Everest? How many of you have done Pratyaksha Praman to Mount Everest? So much information we have. And we have full faith. And how we got it? Shabda Praman. So this is the final way to hear. When we hear from an authoritative source, we can get real knowledge. If those 6 blind men heard from the zookeeper, they can get definitive knowledge of what the animal they were touching was. Why? Because the zookeeper was an authoritative source. So hearing from a proper authority, this is the best way to understand about God. This is the best way to understand about the supreme truth, the absolute truth, and everything related. This is our. So let us understand. Suppose a child wants to know, who is my father? Child is lost at birth. What can they do? They can, well, one idea, they can do some DNA testing, right? But who are you going to test? It would take 1,000 years to figure out who is your. You cannot just test right. So what to do? We take the Shabda Praman. We go to a trusted authority. And that's what do we have? We ask mother. Right? We go to someone who is there at the time of creation. And someone who is trusted. And they can tell us. Just like the Statue of Liberty. So this is Shabda Praman. Hearing from someone who is an authority, who is there at the time. Not anyone randomly. If I want to know the contents of an exam, who do I ask? Who knows definitively? The professor. Prior students may have an idea what might be on the exam. You might have an idea based on your experience. But at best, it's a guess. But the creator of the exam, they know. So they are the authority. So when we approach, we must not just approach anybody. We must approach the proper authority to then get authorized information. Because everybody might have an opinion. If you have the flu, are you going to ask the auto mechanic how to cure your flu? You might get an opinion, but is that authorized? No. You want to ask a doctor, an authorized doctor. Not just one wearing a stethoscope and a badge, but one who is legitimately a doctor. We see a lot of doctors on Halloween. Are you going to ask all of them for health care? No. Right? So we have to go to a proper authority and then hear. Then the knowledge we acquire becomes solid, valid. So why should we approach an authority? Why should we hear? 2 reasons. One, it's the only reliable choice. If you want to know what your parents did in their childhood, can you know besides Shabda Praman? Were you there in their childhood? So you have to hear, you have to ask someone. It's the only reliable choice to get most of the information we need. That is it. And second, it's efficient. It saves time. If you want to know about Mount Everest, you can simply watch one BBC documentary and find out about Mount Everest. The other way, pack your bags, get on a treadmill first, exercise, get into shape, and then climb and go all the way up. Shabda Praman is the easier, more reliable way. It's also safer. Science tells us this arsenic, it's poisonous, it'll kill you. Anybody wants to do Pratyaksha Praman to arsenic? No. We take it, okay, we believe you. I don't need to try it. No. So this Shabda Praman, it is actually the safe way. And we do it every day. In school, we take so much knowledge just by hearing. Right? We authorize the institution to be a bona fide source of knowledge, and then we take it at face value. You know, okay, we might do an experiment or two in the lab just to prove things out. But 99% of all the knowledge we get, we take it through hearing. But we don't hear again randomly. We hear from an authority. Right? So this is the opposite. So where to get authorized information? What is the proof of the authority, particularly when it comes to knowledge about God? We're not just going to take flying lessons from somebody walking down the street saying, I know how to fly a plane. Will you? No. Has to be an authority. So an authority has to meet 3 criteria. 1, the knowledge never changes. The opinion doesn't change from time to time. It's the absolute truth. It's always the truth and it never changes. 2, it's never been proven wrong. It has to be perfect. An absolute and perfect source of knowledge. Then it can be authorized. And 3, it should have stood the test of time. The same facts that were spoken thousands of years ago still hold true. Yes, but whenever new information has come up by other means, it is only collaborated and supported what has already been said. If it can meet these 3 criteria, then it works. Remember, when the biology textbook said the brain was an organ for cooling the blood, what did we have to do with all those textbooks after we found out the brain had a more powerful function? We had to scrap all those books. Why? Because they're no longer useful. That information is wrong. I remember growing up, maybe when some of you grew up, they told us there were 9 planets in the solar system. The last planet being Pluto. Now how many planets are there? 8. So what would be all those science books I read? Useless. Because they have wrong information. So those are all relative knowledge. But we must go to an authority that has timeless, ageless information. Nothing changes. Because we are interested in the absolute truth, not relative truth. So where to find this? This is our scriptures. The Vedic knowledge, it is called Aparishya. Why? It is infallible. Since time immemorial, they've never changed. They've been repeated over and over and over again. In all information that's come out subsequently has only confirmed what has already been spoken in Shastra. And I'm going to prove that to you in a few minutes. It comes from the perfect source. Who? God. Who is there at the time of creation and never sins. And so this becomes the perfect sense of knowledge. It is not, some kind of mental speculation. I had a vision, I had a dream, I have this realization. What I think, and please forgive me, what you think is not so important. What matters is what is coming in our scriptures and through Parampara. That is what matters. That is the knowledge we can take as an authority. Because everybody may have an opinion, and that's okay. But ultimately, to base decisions of where I'm going in this life, we want to look in the realm of facts, hard facts. And that's where the scriptures come in. Okay? So only the Supreme Lord was there at the time of creation. At the time of creation of us. And the creation of everything around. God was the only one there. And so thus, He is ultimately the only authorized source of all knowledge. Everybody else is speculating. Just like I cannot be the authorized source of knowledge of what my parents did in their childhood. Someone who was there has to tell me. And similarly, to know about all of this, only the Supreme Lord knows. And we'll see some experiences. And we have practical experience. In any field of knowledge, we always go to textbooks. Right? If you want to learn calculus, you get a textbook. If you want to learn history, you get a textbook. If you want to learn about the truths of life, you also need a textbook. And that textbook is our Shastra. So let us look at, again, 3 proofs of the validity of our Shastra now. I'm going to look at it in 3 different dimensions. 1, the operating manual. 2, these axiomatic truths. And then 3, the most, I think, maybe stunning part of this discussion, these amazing predictions that are in our Shastra. So the first is an instruction manual. The authoritative source of knowledge, as I said, are our scriptures. So why did God give us scriptures? Well, when you buy a washing machine, what does it come with? Manual. And what is the purpose of that manual?
How to operate.
How to operate, how to understand the functionality. What else? What to do when something goes wrong. What not to do. Yes. They have those big circles with a line through it. Don't do this, don't do that, right? So this operating manual tells us all of these things. How to operate it. How to operate it most efficiently. What to do when something goes wrong. What not to do. All these things come. Right? If you buy a computer, a car, any creation, it comes with an operating manual. Well, this creation also came with an operating manual.
And that is called our Shastras. It tells us what to do when something is wrong. It tells us what to do and also what not to do. How to optimize the opportunity we have in this creation. All that is contained within our Shastra. So this is the operating manual for God's creation. Now the scriptures contain these things called axiomatic truths. A little bit of a difficult topic, but this, things that there are just proofs that don't require any evidence, but you can experience them. They say the proof is in the pudding. The proof of the pudding is in eating. Right? So we have this example. Definition of a point is a circle with radius 0. You cannot really observe radius 0, but you can understand that. Right? Let me go to it. But the point is the Vedas don't require proof. But the proof comes out as we practice it, as we experience it. Give the example of cow dung. Cow dung? Okay. In our Shastra, we know that the stool of any animal or human is considered contaminated. That we must, bathe after. But in Shastra it says that cow dung is pure. You can even bathe the Lord in cow dung. It is a pure substance. How to understand that? The British, when they saw Indians living amidst cow dung, they thought, what are these primitive people doing? They're very backwards. Let us advance them in technology. Actually, now science is understanding that actually cow dung is the only truly antiseptic substance. When you spray Lysol somewhere, on the bottle it says, how effective is it?
99.9.
What? Why not 100%?
Chance of error.
I want 100%. Cow dung is actually 100% antiseptic. No bacteria can grow on it. They have done studies in hospitals. Patients who are recovering in a room with cow dung walls and floors have a significantly lower reinfection rate than those in a so-called sterile room. Now, who is right? Science or our Shastra? Like this, we see so many statements, and I'll present a few more. But the point is, these truths, they're accepted as fact. But as we experience them, we understand that they're right. So the Vedas are now, it's a complete and perfect set of knowledge. Every question we have is answered. It is a vast compilation. It leaves nothing for us to speculate or guess. And you can take a challenge. If you find any flaw in it, we should discard everything. Like that science book. As soon as it says 9 planets, we have to take the whole book and throw it out. Because now I don't know what else is wrong. So similarly, if you find any flaw in the Shastra, we can disregard it all. But since the beginning of time, you'll not find a single flaw in anything. And this is how vast it is. This is just a summary organizational chart. There are millions and millions and millions of verses. We have the 4 Vedas plus the Pancha Veda. We have 1,200 Upanishads, 108 primary Upanishads, and the different Puranas. So much knowledge is out there. And at some point, it can be even overwhelming. It would fill 10 or 15 basements like this if we brought all of our Vedic knowledge into it. So what to do? Well, the good thing is we have this knowledge. It has been synthesized, condensed, the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Lord Shiva says that Ekam Shastra, let everyone study one Shastra. And that one Shastra, he said, the Bhagavad Gita. He said in the Gita Mahatmya that everything that we are to know, the essence is condensed into this. And good for us, right? Because we are in this time of, we want cliff notes. We want the easy version, right? We want microwave dinners. We don't want them to do handmade from scratch. If you look in the grocery stores now, years ago you never saw, but half the grocery store now is frozen section because we want to just pluck something and throw it in instant meals. Right? We want things quick. We're not going to take them. So thankfully, even in our Shastra, we have these things like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which is displayed here. And it contains the essence of all knowledge that we need to get. So we don't have to go into such exhaustive study. But we will get everything in its complete essence with this study. We'll not miss anything. And so how do the scriptures make it down to us? We're sitting here, 2022. This was spoken long ago. How do we get this knowledge? Well, the knowledge we know was originally coming from the Supreme Lord. And it comes down. It was used to be passed down through oral reception. Here we see Krishna speaking to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma would pass down. But Srila Vyasadeva 5,000 years ago now put all the scriptures to writing. Why? Because today, we cannot even remember a 10-digit cell phone number. Back in the day, how many phone numbers as a child we knew? So many. And now we may not even know our kids' mother, father, aunts. Why? Because we're become hooked on these crutches. Our ability to know. Previously, we would hear and have full memorization and realization. But as our cognitive capabilities have declined, we'll see. So that's Vyasadeva has put this knowledge to writing. And how to get it through us? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasa viduhu sakala neha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. He says, Evam param praptim, that this transcendental knowledge, it must come in parampara. That is how Rajarsi, the great saintly kings, have understood this knowledge. And whenever that knowledge is disturbed, Krishna says, Dharma samstapanarthai sabhavana. I come and reestablish it. So this knowledge, it must come because there's only one original source of all knowledge. And who is that? It's God. Because He was there at the creation, nobody else. So how does this disciplic succession work? As I mentioned, Krishna spoke to Brahma, but Brahma spoke to Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva, down to Madhvacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Like this knowledge is passed down. So disciplic succession is critical. Let me explain disciplic succession in a way we can understand. We have a plug here. We have a plug here. This plug is connected in an uninterrupted link 65 miles away to Monroe, Michigan, where there's a power plant. There's not a break in it. And how do I know? I can stick my finger in the plug and know? No, if I can. If I had hair, my hair would stand up. So what do? We put a lamp. And then I turn the switch and the bulb goes on. I know. When the bulb goes on, I know there's an uninterrupted link back to the source of the power. That is the generation station. And if the bulb does not go on, I know the bulb is good, then I know there's a break somewhere. This is parampara. Meaning knowledge, it comes from the source and is passed along. So from this plug point to the station, we see these poles, right? These big poles. And what are they doing? They're carrying the line forward. But are the poles creating electricity? They're simply carrying it. This is the guru in the guru parampara. The guru does not create knowledge. Simply transmits knowledge, but doesn't create it. Who is the creator of knowledge?
God Himself.
And if knowledge is coming from someone who's not connected in parampara, it is like this. If at the end of this subdivision there's one pole, and I see wires going into all the houses, but I don't see any wire going from that pole somewhere else, will you plug in that wire to your house? Why not? Huh? The source is missing. That pole is not connected to the source, the power station. So what is the value of the wire that it is carrying? Nothing. So someone who is bringing knowledge, but if their knowledge is not connected back to the original source, it has no value. It may look like a pole or wire. It may look like knowledge. And that is why the Lord says, Evam parampara praptim. It must come in parampara. This knowledge must come. Because the original source, it must be connected to. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Because that pole that has a wire, we know. We're not foolish to think that that pole is creating a power that will then feed my house. Guru does not create the knowledge. He simply passes along. And this is how Parampara works. We'll talk more about this in the fifth session. So now let us get to the final section today. These astounding truths. So these next series of points will be really startling to you. So when Columbus wanted to travel west, he was told no. Why was he told no? Part two. Why was Columbus told no?
He'd fall off the earth.
He'd fall off the earth. But who gave him money? The Queen. Now this was only 500 years ago. If 500 years ago you go to any uneducated, at least academically, doesn't mean unintelligent, two different words, okay? Uneducated farmer in India, and you ask them, is the earth round or flat? What will they tell you? They'll say Bugol. Earth is round. Bugol. It's a ball. It's a round. Our Shastra has talked about Earth being round forever. But 500 years ago, Earth was thought to be flat by the leading people. And Columbus finally proved that it was round. But Shastra has been saying that. You see this term Bugol everywhere. How many continents are there on this planet? 7. Before Columbus sailed west, there were thought to be 4. Then he discovered 2 more. And then in the 1900s, early 1900s, the 7th continent of Antarctica. If you read in Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see that Prithu Maharaj, he was ruler of Shapta Dvip. Shapta means?
7.
Dvip means? Srimad Bhagavatam has been speaking for thousands of years about how many continents there are. Yes, science is now collaborating what has already been spoken long ago in our Shastra. In 3rd canto, I have it here. This is one of the most amazing proofs of the validity of this knowledge. So in the 3rd canto, Kapil Muni is speaking to his mother Devaki. And in the 31st chapter of this book, there is an exquisite and detailed explanation of the development of the baby in the womb of a mother. We see this picture and it's like second nature to us. Why? Because we've seen this so many times. But in this Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains when the baby develops its heartbeat, at what point, when it develops its hands, fingernails, its skin, all the different parts of the body, when its consciousness develops, what its position is, when it rotates to the right, all this knowledge. But doctors 50, 60 years ago knew none of this. Why? There was no imaging technology. But today we can see. But what science is seeing today is already been spoken and is only confirming what is it. Whatever science is saying today, nothing is contradicting what has already been spoken in this 31st chapter. When this 31st chapter is presented to OBGYNs, it's been done by different speakers in conferences. They are blown away at the detail and some of the answers that are provided that only recently science has found. So this is the type of information that is present within our Shastra. It is the ultimate authority. It is always true. It brings so much information. You know, science continues to contradict each other as well. You know, we thought in the 19th century the atom was the smallest particle. Then came subatomic theory. What is coming next? The world time is kept by what type of a clock? Anybody knows what the most accurate clock in the world is?
Sun.
It's an atomic clock. In the 3rd canto, 11th chapter, 3rd verse, it speaks about how time is kept by determining the movement of atoms. This atomic clock is actually presented in our Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the type of knowledge that we find. Of course, there's much more, but these are just giving us some faith in the knowledge of our Shastras. How long our Shastras have been talking about the benefits of yoga? Now, everyone's a yogi. There are stores and stores just selling yoga clothing at very expensive prices to do yoga. Something we do in our dhoti kurta and be very comfortable. This is an ancient science that we knew was good for us. But now mankind is understanding. The appearance of Lord Buddha predicted, explained in the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says when he'll appear, where he'll appear, to whom. Far before it even happened, it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. The appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 11th canto. The appearance of Chanakya Pandit in the 12th canto. Even the presence of Lord Jesus Christ in the Bhavishya Puran and the Prophet Muhammad. All is given in our Shastra. So this knowledge is profoundly potent. So we have this scriptures, we have this knowledge, and now it's for us to access. We know everything comes with a manual. This creation also came with a manual. And it contains amazing truths, statements, that when we put them into practice, then we find its evidence, like cow dung. It may sound counterintuitive, but when we put it in practice, we actually experience its potency. So much instruction about how to find perfection of life, freedom from stress, fear, anxiety, how to develop relationships in society productively, how to raise a family, how to build a career. All this knowledge is presented within our Shastras. And that is what we're going to unfold in the coming weeks after we get through this initial set of discussions. It's how to understand that. So this is the understanding. We have 3 ways to acquire knowledge: Pratyaksha Praman, Anuman Praman, and Shabda Praman. And to know cake, where can we go? Pratyaksha Praman. It's okay. But to know about God, to know about my purpose in life, to know about who am I, where am I going, how to get there, what is the only way we can really get authoritative information? Just do Shabda Praman. But not hearing from just anyone. Hearing from an authorized source who is ultimately connected back to the original source, to the person who was there at the time of creation, who has all the answers. Google and Wikipedia think they have the answers, but only the Lord has all the answers. And when we get that information, then we can set ourselves on the perfect journey of self-discovery. Thank you very much. So this is what we covered today. So next week, we'll discuss now this very important question. If I know God is the key to my happiness, I have faith He exists, I know where to get knowledge, who the heck am I? And I'm not going to ask you to bring your baby pictures and your passports and your identification. But I want to just contemplate on one question. I think I asked it earlier. Just contemplate on it between now and next Friday. Who were you 100 years ago? And who will you be 100 years from now? Whatever it says on your passport or your ID, you know you won't be that. That is what we're going to answer. Who are we eternally? And what has been my relationship with everything around me? So that is who am I, which will then bring us to Why do bad things happen to good people? A very important question we must answer to solidify our faith in the existence of God, because an incomplete answer to this question is what leads many of us to even question the existence of God. If there is a God, how is it that bad things can be happening to good people? We'll answer that. And also, why is it good things are bad things are happening? Sorry, why are bad things happening to good people, and why do good things happen to bad people? Both are troubling. And then finally, what does this all mean for me? How can I actually apply all this knowledge I got? Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhupada. Questions before we play a quiz game? Yes.
So I'm just wondering, like, if this information is like you know what's in the Bhagavad Gita is so integral to our lives that it's like a manual for our lives, why are we not inherently born with it? Like in the same way that we can move our arms or our heart beats for itself, why do we have to go out into the world to find this?
Because it is free will that establishes our quest for this knowledge. So the soul is inherently made up, we'll talk about next week, of three ingredients: Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Chit means full of knowledge. So actually all of this knowledge we inherently have within us. But due to our free will, our decisions, we have come into a point of ignorance. We have forgotten this knowledge. And so now, through this journey, we are in the process of awakening it. Because, a little bit longer answer to your question, let me go at least halfway into it. We had a desire, I'm going to explain this in the, not next week's session, but the following week's session. We had a desire to try to be separate from the Lord, to enjoy separate from Him. Which, frankly and actually, is not possible. Because everything we are dependent on is the Supreme Lord. But to fulfill that desire of ours, the Lord put us into illusion, where we forgot the Lord. But the Lord didn't make us forget Him. Who made us forget Him? We did. Because we had that desire. So, that knowledge is on. But, when we left, the Lord sat right next to us in our heart as Paramatma. And He says, Sarvasya chaham ridishani vistam mataspatir gyanam apohanam cha. He says, I am seated in everybody's heart. And I am the source of remembrance and forgetfulness. So if any point in our journey we want to remember again what we forgot, the Lord is there to inspire us to come to this knowledge, to take to this Shastra, and to acquire it. But it is up to us. So it is not forced upon us. Thus it is not innate. But again, the ability to walk, the ability for the heart to beat, the ability for the eyes to blink, all things we don't learn. Remember, those are abilities, not of I, they are abilities of the body. And what we're talking about knowledge is about knowledge of I, which will become more clear next week. So, yeah.
Bhagavatam explained Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, these all appearances will happen. And does this also explains like when these people will come, appearances will happen, it will create such a biggest conflict of the earth, having so many religions and creating conflicts, fights and sort of those sort of problems. And what is the solution of that?
Yes. If you read the 12th canto, you read the first few chapters of the 12th canto, you see a stark and shocking description of what the characteristics manifest in this age. I have a presentation actually on it. It is amazing how it shows who will become leaders in society, what their qualifications will become. It'll talk about how unjust activities take place. It'll talk about how people choose marriages, how people choose professions, and all these things we see around us today. So it actually explains what is the nature of the world that we're living in, and how this age of Kali Yuga will degrade. But at the end of Kali Yuga, it'll come back to the age of Satyuga, where things will be again more wholesome. But to answer your question, how to solve it, so the explanation of the issues are there, but what is it, how to get out for me? That the Lord explains. Because remember, Parikshit Maharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam is a 7-day conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj's condition is what?
He's dying.
He's dying. How many days he has to live?
7 days.
7 days. So he goes to Shukadeva Goswami and says, what is the best thing I should do? And basically the Srimad Bhagavatam is an answer to that. How to solve the situation that he's in, and how to attain the highest and ultimate destination. Now that Krishna answers simply in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and then finally in the end instructions, where he says, Antakale chamanameva smanamnikva kalevaram yaparati sabhavavam gachantakale kalevaram. He says, if you remember me at the time of death, then you will attain me. Of this there is no doubt. When he says, Yam yam pismanam bhavam gachantakale kalevaram, whatever you remember, that you will achieve. If you remember your dog at the time, you'll end up in that way. And if you remember me, you'll achieve me. So that is the way out. We'll talk more about this in the 5th module. But yes, it is predicted, all this nature of the world. It talks about, one example, it talks about how family lives will become so broken, and that people will choose spouses simply on the basis, please forgive me, but it's the nature, simply on the basis of sex life, appearances. And that's what we see in society today. What is the divorce rate? There's more than 50%. Wasn't like that previously. But yet we're so-called advancing in society. So like this, it is discussed. But then the solutions are also there. And ultimately the solutions are taking to a spiritually centered life. One can overcome all of these influences and situations. How to do that? That's the 5th module. How to practically do it. Because again, taking to a spiritually centered life doesn't mean we're going to sell all our stuff and go to a cave in the forest and practice spirituality. No. Taking to a spiritual centered life means, in my current situation, how do I bring practical spirituality to my life? That is what the Lord is. Okay? Yes.
Prabhuji, as you mentioned at the beginning of this session, to acquire knowledge, we have Sabda Praman and Pratiksha Praman and Anuman. So finally, out of these, as per given the example of Everest, you said Sabda and Anuman, based on ultimate Siddhanta is physical appearance. Somebody might have gone and seen there is, yes, whatever I heard, whatever I imagined or guessed, there is an existence. Somebody went to Mount Everest. So when God things comes, we are hearing, we are predicting, but is there anybody seen God as a protector from us?
So, just in your example, right? So, Mount Everest, I am taking it as Shabda Praman, but I think your point is, but it originates with someone's Pratyaksha Praman. Somebody saw Everest, came back and reported it to everybody else, and everybody else takes it as Shabda Praman. Right? That is your question. So now, how can we take that, right? That is my point. Who has done Pratyaksha Praman to this knowledge? Who is there at the time of creation?
God himself.
God himself. He's the only one who can speak authoritatively about the creation of us, about the supreme destination. One who has seen everything can speak authoritatively about it. So who has seen everything? The Supreme One. So all this knowledge then must come from Him. But how to get it from Him is not in my context. It is evam param param prapti. That knowledge that the Lord is speaking is coming down to us through Guru Parampara. And it is not different than hearing directly from the Lord. I'll give you an example. Suppose you want to know what I ate for breakfast today. Anybody know? You can guess.
Yes.
You can do Anuman Praman. You can guess, right? Yeah, it's a good guess. Actually, I did answer it. That's probably. That's a good guess. That's a guess. Were you willing to bet your life on that answer? Yes, it's a guess. So are we willing to bet our life on something? But if I tell you what I ate for breakfast, and then you tell him, it goes around, and by the time it reaches you, will you know what I ate for breakfast today? If and only if one thing happens. What I tell you, you pass on as it is. Don't add your own masala to the story. Don't subtract anything. Don't add anything. Just pass it on as it is. Then you hearing from her what I ate is no different than you hearing from me directly, right? It's the same information knowledge. That is Guru Parampara. The authorized bona fide Guru Parampara. They don't add anything, don't subtract anything. Present it as it is. That's why Srila Prabhupada, when he presented his Bhagavad Gita, he wrote it as it is. And on page 30, he establishes, first of all, where is the source of this knowledge? He says, I am not the author. I am simply the translator. This is the parampara, starting from Krishna, all the way down. How this knowledge has been presented. So, we got to Everest also through parampara, a different type of parampara. Somebody who saw it, then passed it down through some channels that came to us. This knowledge about the entire, that's why I said, any knowledge we take, there are many versions of Bhagavad Gita. But if you find it like the power pole, not connected to the source, it has no value. It must be connected to the original source because that's the only person who knows everything completely and definitively. Everybody else is a dependent knower. What does dependent knower mean? I'm dependent on somebody telling me. Just like to know what my parents did, I'm a dependent knower because I wasn't there. We are all dependent knowers. So that is how we would get that. And then to answer your final question, has anybody seen God? Of course. And you will also see God. Lord Brahma says in his Brahma Samhita prayers, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, that when the eyes are anointed with purity and with love, then one will also see the Lord. But until that point, don't worry. It is not as though we'll be blind. We'll see, not with our eyes, but through our ears. We'll see through our ears, like hearing from the authority. We'll know everything. And yes, in time, through the process of spiritual purification, we'll also see ultimately with our own eyes. But we'll see nothing different. It won't be any stark, transformative realization. Because everything we heard, we'll now see. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask a follow-up. No, please.
Okay, so as you said, parampara, based on the parampara, one knowledge is intrusted from one person to other. So definitely there is a chance information may be illustrated differently. but only the person who is the supreme power, what was coming by him, that is the pure and perfect one. So why Bhagavad Gita Lord Krishna, he did not wrote himself by somebody else on behalf of him?
Who spoke Bhagavad Gita? He's the author.
Yeah.
Simply Vyasadeva wrote it. But remember, I know the core of your question. To know if this plug is connected all the way to the power station, we can follow the line, right? We can go down underneath the ground, above ground, through tunnels, and follow it all the way back to see that it's connected, right? Or there's another way. What's the second way we can know if it's connected? Put a hand in, right? Or put in a lamp. How do I know that this Bhagavad Gita is connected to Parampara? Start to practice its teachings. When the heart shines bright, there's a transformation of heart. Just as the bulb transformed from dark to bright, when the heart transforms from ignorance to knowledge, practical realization, then you'll know. That is the proof. Again, what is the proof of the Shastra? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. You can hear that this pudding is, let's see, sweet rice here. It is sweet, it is wonderful, it is soft, it is this, it is that. But until you eat it, then you know for sure. Similarly, once we begin to practice the principles of this Bhagavad Gita, then we'll see its true potency and that connection back to the original source. Keep asking. Yes.
Prabhuji, this is a wonderful knowledge, the spiritual knowledge and the Bhagavad Gita and all the things. In the previous, the parampara is, as you said, it is passing through one person to go to next and next. And then why in the newer generation it is cut? What that means is that there is no guru parampara, there is no knowledge transfer, that what we Shastra and all the things. Those are all separated from the bona fide education institutes. And now, to get this one, we have to struggle and we have to follow. Why that is happening? Why the people not attempted to bring it back?
Well, it is. It's why we're here. What are we trying to do? We're trying to bring this knowledge to the forefront. Why? Because society has pushed it to separation of church and state. As the means that we should take all our spiritual education out of our academic curriculum. It has been the downfall. That also is predicted in this 12th canto. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to share this knowledge and to inspire everyone to take back to the study, because this is the real eternal knowledge. Yes, mathematics and science and literature and history, they're important for us to be able to navigate this material world. But ultimately, we need to know how to navigate this soul back to its original home. So we must come to knowledge on the spiritual life. But society has pushed this knowledge away, and this is the nature as we move more and more into an ignorant state. But our opportunity is to go against that current, because following, conventional norms takes us to so many things. Think about what has become second nature in convention today. Just drive down the freeway, and what billboards do you see more of than anything else today that you didn't see even 5 years ago? You see billboard advertisements for one thing more than ever before.
Lottery?
Drugs, marijuana,
No, it's everywhere.
everywhere. This is the direction, right? So our opportunity is to take to this, transcendental knowledge. And that is why Krishna is called. There's no shortage of knowledge out there. But what did he call this knowledge? Raja Vidya. This is the Raja Vidya, is the king of knowledge. But then he explains why it's the king of knowledge. Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, it is the most confidential. Confidential meaning it is not so widespread. Not that we should keep it confidential, but it is held as well. but it is pavitram uttamam. It is the most purifying knowledge. What are we purifying of? The lust and anger and greed and pride, envy, illusion that is sitting within all of our hearts. Let's purify. What knowledge will purify it? This knowledge. Pratyaksha Bhagamam. The effect is directly perceivable. It's not some theoretical, okay, I practiced this for 10, 25 years in the hope that some point in the future something good will happen. No. The results of this practice is immediate, it's perceivable, he says. Then he says, Susukam Karta Avyayam. That this Raja Vidya, the beauty of it is, it's joyfully performed. It's not any intense austerity, great labor or pain. But it's actually a pleasurable, fun process. That's the potency of it, and we are here trying to bring it out. So you study it, take to it, and share it with others. That is our hope. Yes?
I know this, the question I'm going to ask you right now, it is put for the next session.
Okay.
But since I will not be here leaving for India, so I was curious to know the answer for that.
Okay.
To allow me to ask that.
Yes, I'll try my best.
The question is, why good things happen to bad people? This is the things that I really wanted to know from you.
Okay.
This has been troubling me a lot.
Okay. So, if you can at least accommodate that the answer I give will not be fully fulfilling because I don't have the time to present it in totality. So it'll feel incomplete. If you allow that, then I can answer. Otherwise, the thing is incomplete. Just like if I describe, the buffet dinner that's coming, the description is incomplete. It's complete when I have that in front of me, right? So I can describe it today, but to give the full answer to your question, I need the whole session to do it, okay? So let me give you just at least the principle of it, and then I'll make a way available for you to hear the full answer too, I promise you that, okay? So why bad things happen to good people? Ultimately, everything in this material world operates on the law of karma. The law of karma is very simple. Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Kind of applies to the law of conservation of energy. There is no energy created or destroyed, it's simply transformed. So every action we do, there is a reaction. Now, we forget our actions. If I ask you exactly what you were doing on Tuesday at 12:06 p.m., you probably won't remember. You could scratch your brain and think and think and think, and then maybe, but more than likely, you won't remember. But who remembers? How the Lord knows? He is the supreme witness. So all of our actions, they have a reaction. Just like in the office, actions I do, there's a reaction. If I do good work, I get a good reaction. A raise, a promotion. If I do bad work, I get a
Termination.
bad reaction. Pink slip. Bye-bye. Action, reaction. Right? Same thing in the home. Same thing in school. We see it. So ultimately, what we do carries red. And what is a good activity and a bad activity is not based on what I think is good and what I think is bad. It's also not what the city of Troy thinks is good, or the state of Michigan, the country of the U.S., the United Nations, or whatever governing body. The ultimate laws we must answer to are whose laws? God's laws. Because He is the creator. So, every action carries an equal and opposite reaction. And because God is the disposer, the adjudicator of these reactions, it's a perfect system. In the court of law, we see imperfect judgments. Why? Because the judge was not there as a direct witness to whatever is being discussed in the court. They are relying on information presented by others who also were not there. So there is room for error in the court of law. But in God's court of law, there is no room for error. Why? Because He's the direct witness. He's the direct witness. And thus, the reaction is never too much or too little. It is exact in proportion to our action. So when I'm walking down the street and somebody slaps me, that is a reaction in exacting proportion to some action I did. But the problem is, I don't remember slapping anybody. Wait a minute, I've never slapped anybody my whole life. But one life is like reading from one page of a book. I have had how many births? Millions of births. Millions. And in those millions of births, I've had many human births. And in those human births, I've done so many activities. So the reactions I see today, they may be from something I did yesterday or 2 days ago, but they also may be from something I did in my last life. Or I don't remember, but who remembers? The Lord. So when I see bad things happening to good people, I'm seeing the good today and the bad reaction today. Well, what am I missing? Something that was done previously that I didn't see. So this is the reason. Dhritarashtra had the same question. He asked Krishna. He said, I was born the eldest son of a king. That is the best position to be in. But I was born blind. Then I had 100 sons. My younger brother only had 5. Again, I'm in a better position. But today, all 100 of my sons are gone, and all 5 of my brother's sons are here. What is the cause of this misfortune? Yes. So Krishna told, oh Dhritarashtra, 100 lifetimes ago you were the son of a hunter. And as the son of the hunter, you shot an arrow out and blinded the father bird. And then you killed all 100 of its offspring. And so now, in this life, you have been born blind, and you've also lost all 100 of your offspring. So then Dhritarashtra asks, wait a minute. You said 100 lifetimes ago, why you waited so long to give me this reaction? And he said, well, I had to wait for you to acquire the good credits to get 100 children. So you forgot, but I did not. So this law of karma is a perfect system. But now we have to be very careful. So the answer is every difficulty I face, it's the law of karma. But we have to be extremely careful that we do not become then numb or blind to others' suffering. Oh, that's just their karma. No. That is not the conclusion. The conclusion then is that when we see somebody suffering, we think how we can really help them. overcome the suffering from their karma. And Krishna says that when one takes to a spiritual life, he says, Aham tum sarva papebhyo. I take their reactions. So how to truly overcome our karma is by taking to a spiritually centered life. So this is the, again, brief answer, that it is the laws of karma. I know it won't be completely satisfying, I promise. I told you that in the beginning. But you have to at least take some of these principles, perfect law system. We don't know when the action was performed. Never too much, never too little. And ultimately, there is a solution to what we've done in the past. Our past karma, we can also evaporate through a spiritual practice.
Can I just follow up with this? You said that previous life, I mean, whatever you've done, the results come to this life. Now, seeing is believing. As a person outside, I see there's so many people in India who have made money through wrong means and committed a lot of crime, but they are enjoying that. They've got power and they've got wealth, and even the law of the land is not able to punish them. Somehow they are able to, because of their money, power, they are able to get away with it. And more troublesome thing is that even God is not punishing them.
Hold on. Hold on, right there. I knew you were going. That's why I said we're going to answer both questions. Why do good things happen to bad people? Because that's also troubling. Because you said God is not punishing man. You can escape man's laws. I'm going to tell this story in 2 weeks, but I'll tell it now for preview. Two men show up in court. One man has killed one person. The other man has killed 300 people. The man who killed one person is judged by the judge. It says, you are sentenced to death. And then the man who killed 300 people, the judge says to him, you are sentenced to death. And he starts smiling. And the judge says, what are you smiling about? He says, this man killed one person and got death. I killed 300 and got death. So I got 299 for free. He got 299 free from man's laws. But the other 299 he'll also answer to God's laws. So one may be making great wealth today because they have also done some good credits in the past. But whatever bad they're doing today, their day of reckoning is also coming. We don't need to be God's law enforcement officer. He is his own law enforcement officer. So somebody may be enjoying living the life of luxury, doing all kinds of bad things. They're building their bank account of negative credits. And they also will be slapped and tormented. It is a law of nature. We may not know when. It is not our disposition to say it should happen today or tomorrow. Because whose plan is perfect? So we have to have faith in the system, in the law of karma. And when it happens, doesn't happen, don't worry, just know it will. So again, you can escape man's laws, but you cannot escape God. That's why in the Bible, the same concept exists in Christianity. It says, the mills of God grind very finely. What does that mean? When you put wheat into a mill, every piece of wheat is ground finely. Nothing slips through. Meaning, every action we do, it carries through. Nothing slips through the system. So, and again, I'm going to give an example of a grain silo when we meet in 2 weeks on this topic, and it'll become even more clear about this good and bad happening to good and bad people. So, I promise you it'll be hopefully partially fulfilling, but in the fourth module it'll become completely clear. And then if we have time for maybe one more before we do our quiz game.
Yeah.
You said you
Oh, the frog story. Okay, I'll end with the frog story. So, Dr. Frog. Have you all met Dr. Frog? Very smart frog. He has a PhD. That's why he's called Dr. Frog. So Dr. Frog was staying in this well, and one of his friends, Mr. Frog, came to see Dr. Frog. And Mr. Frog said, Dr. Frog, I have seen the ocean. And Dr. Frog said, really, you've seen the ocean? And Mr. Frog says, yes, it's this giant body of water, like beyond what the eyes could see. And Dr. Frog says, giant body of water, really? Now remember, Dr. Frog got his PhD in the well, so he's never left this well. And so he's thinking, wow, is it twice as big as my well? He says, no, you know what I'm saying? Is it 5 times as big as my well? It's like, no, you know what I'm saying? It's like infinite. 10? Okay, it can't be more than 25 times bigger than my well. And finally, Dr. Frog, Mr. Frog says, you know what I'm saying? It's many times bigger. And Dr. Frog couldn't perceive it. And what did he do? He kicked Mr. Frog out and said, you're a liar. You're speaking nonsense. Why? Because Dr. Frog, though so smart, was trying to understand the vastness of the ocean from his own experience of the size of a well and trying to extrapolate. From that perspective, it seems impossible. When we talk about millions and millions of universes, I think that's impossible. Like, how could somebody create such a... Because we can't create something so extraordinary. You know, when we see this picture, Krishna holding Govardhan Mountain, 64 miles long, and this, 16 miles high, we think, oh, this is a fanciful story. Why? Because I can't hold my cell phone like this for 7 hours. So if I can't do this, then how God can hold a mountain? Right? So we extrapolate our experience. So Srila Prabhupada called this Dr. Frog mentality. So let us not be Dr. Frogs, thinking we are too smart, trying to take our own experiences and then apply them to the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. There are a few variations of that story. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, shall we play our quiz game? All right, everybody get their phones out and open up Kahoot.it, if you remember. If you need internet,